The ugly truth about why the worst people succeed. Darwinism. Have you ever looked at someone in power, a politician, a CEO, an influencer, and thought, how did they get there? Not because they're brilliant, not because they're kind, but because they seem to embody everything we shouldn't reward: ruthlessness, manipulation, ego, greed. And yet, there they are, thriving, winning, gaining followers, gaining wealth, gaining control. It's one of the ugliest truths we face, and the moment you start to see it, you can't unsee it. The worst people often succeed, and not in spite of their worst traits, but because of them. And this isn't new. Darwin didn't just revolutionize biology, he gave us a brutal lens through which to view human existence: survival of the fittest. But here's the thing most people miss: fittest doesn't mean best. It doesn't mean kindest, wisest, or most ethical. It means most adaptable to the environment. And in a world driven by competition, scarcity, social dominance, and status games, guess what traits become fit? Aggression, deception, narcissism, the capacity to exploit others without guilt, the ability to put the self before the collective. In other words, the very traits we label as toxic are often the same traits that dominate hierarchical systems.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Let's go deeper. Imagine a social environment as a jungle. Not a literal one, but a psychological, economic, and political landscape where only certain behaviors are rewarded. It doesn't matter what your ideals are. What matters is what gets results. And if lying gets you elected, if manipulation gets you followers, if exploitation gets you rich, then by Darwinian logic, those behaviors work. They spread. They reproduce. They become strategies for winning. And this is where it gets dark. The worst people don't just survive, they set the rules of the game. They shape the environment to reward themselves. And if you've ever felt like being honest makes you vulnerable, or being kind makes you easy to take advantage of, you've already glimpsed this truth. This creates a philosophical trap. We want to believe that good people rise, that truth matters, that justice works. But the reality, as harsh as it is, often looks different. In many industries, the top is not occupied by the most competent, but by the most relentlessly strategic. The ones who learn to speak the language of power, who know how to hide cruelty behind charm, who play people like chess pieces, not because they're evil in the comic book sense, but because they see life as a game to be won. And they play to win. Always. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. These traits don't just survive, they're selected for. In corporate culture, in politics, in entertainment. We reward confidence, even when it's empty. We reward charisma, even when it's fake. We reward decisiveness, even when it's reckless. Why? Because these traits signal power, and power is magnetic. People follow it, even when they don't know why. We're wired to recognize dominance. It's primal. It cuts past reason. So when someone walks into a room radiating ruthless certainty, we listen, even if they're wrong, even if they're dangerous. But let's pause here and ask something painful. Do we secretly admire the worst people? Not in a moral sense, but in a psychological one. Do we envy their freedom, their willingness to break rules we feel trapped by, their ability to pursue success without shame or self-doubt? Maybe that's what really bothers us. Not just that they succeed, but that they do what we won't. They ignore guilt. They disregard consensus. They act. While we hesitate, they move. While we reflect, they conquer. And maybe, just maybe, some part of us wishes we could be like them, even if we hate what they represent. This is where Darwin collides with philosophy. Because if nature rewards the traits that ensure reproduction and dominance, then morality becomes optional, not necessary for success, just a cultural overlay. And that's terrifying. It means that ethics might not be woven into the structure of reality. It might just be a story we tell ourselves to stay sane, to cooperate, to sleep at night. But the ones who rise often don't tell that story. Or if they do, they don't believe it. They use it on others, as a tool, a mask. So what do we do with this truth? Do we become like them? Do we abandon integrity to play the game better? Or do we resist, knowing that resistance might cost us everything? That's the philosophical dilemma. The people who rise without principle reshape the world in their image. And if we don't understand how they succeed, we'll keep losing to them over and over again. Because we're playing a different game. One based on fairness, cooperation, decency. And they're playing to win, no matter the cost. But here's the twist. Survival of the fittest doesn't just mean the nastiest win. It means the most strategically fit win, and strategy can wear many masks. In the next part, we'll look at how the worst people hack social systems to rise and why being nice isn't enough to stop them. We'll ask, can goodness ever compete with ruthlessness, or must it evolve into something sharper, colder, and more aware to survive? How the ruthless hack the system, why niceness alone will never win. If you've ever wondered why being nice, kind, or even morally upright often fails to get results in cutthroat environments, the answer isn't that goodness is weak. It's that goodness by itself is naive. It assumes a world that plays fair. It assumes systems are designed to reward merit. But in reality, especially in systems shaped by competition, scarcity, and perception, niceness is not a strategy. It's a default, and those who rise to the top rarely play by defaults. They hack the system. Let's be precise here. When we say hack, we're talking about exploiting the rules of a structure without breaking them outright. It's not necessarily illegal. It's not always visibly unethical. But it's surgical. Calculated. It's knowing how to manipulate incentives, perceptions, hierarchies, and expectations to get ahead. The ruthless don't just work hard, they study the game. They see what people respond to, not what they should respond to. They understand that most people operate on emotion, not logic. So they don't need to be right. They don't need to be good. They just need to be persuasive. Persuasion in a competitive system is everything. Think about corporate environments. The person who gets promoted isn't always the most skilled, it's the one who knows how to signal competence, who knows how to manage impressions, leverage relationships, and speak in ways that trigger authority bias. In politics, the ones who win aren't the most truthful, they're the most memorable. In social media, it's not the creators with the most value, it's the ones who understand algorithms, virality, and attention economics. The ruthless don't fight the system, they become fluent in it. And while we're waiting to be recognized for our virtue, they're already 5 moves ahead, gaming the structure we thought was fair. This isn't just cynical, it's Darwinian. In any competitive ecosystem, traits that maximize influence and control get replicated. And over time, systems evolve around those traits. which means the people who thrive are the ones who adapt to that environment faster. If manipulation works, then those who manipulate will rise. If charisma works, then narcissists will dominate. If speed matters more than depth, then shallow performers beat thoughtful thinkers. And the worst part, these systems often reward outputs, not integrity. So long as the numbers look good, profits, votes, engagement, it doesn't matter how you got them. The system doesn't care, and neither do most people. Now, let's talk about niceness. Niceness is not a strategy, it's an expectation. It's passive, polite, socially acceptable. But it doesn't defend itself. It doesn't assert. It doesn't compete. And in a world where others are optimizing for dominance, niceness becomes a liability. It makes you predictable, easy to overlook, easy to use. The ruthless know this. So they exploit it. They surround themselves with agreeable people who won't challenge them. They weaponize politeness to diffuse confrontation. They use charm to disarm critics. And when niceness finally resists, it's often too late. The damage is done, the power is taken, and the rules have already changed. But we don't have to become cruel to survive. That's the nuance most people miss. The opposite of niceness isn't evil, it's clarity. It's strategic awareness. It's understanding power without being seduced by it. It's learning how to be kind and strong, ethical and effective. The solution isn't to abandon your values, it's to weaponize your wisdom, to understand the game well enough to play it on your terms. The worst people succeed not because they're evil geniuses, but because they're willing to do what others won't. If you can learn what they do without becoming what they are, you can outmaneuver them quietly, intelligently, relentlessly. And that's where the real power lies, not in copying the ruthless, but in decoding their tactics, in turning their strengths into vulnerabilities, in using your moral clarity as a guide, not a leash. The world doesn't just need more nice people. It needs more dangerous good people, people who know how to think like predators, but choose to protect the herd, people who are fluent in power, but loyal to truth. So now we ask the deeper question, can we create a form of strength that doesn't rely on cruelty? Can we evolve a new kind of Darwinism, one not based on domination, but on intelligent cooperation? In the next part, we'll explore what that evolution might look like. We'll ask, is there a future where the best people, not the worst, can rise to the top? And what would it take to build a system that rewards depth over deception? The rise of the ethically strategic. Can the best people ever win? What if we've been asking the wrong question all along? It's not just why the worst people succeed, it's whether the best people can ever succeed without becoming like them. That's the real philosophical challenge. Because the world doesn't reward intentions, it rewards execution. And if good people can't translate their values into power, into influence, into systems that last, then goodness remains a personal virtue, not a societal force. The truth is, the world doesn't change until good people get better at playing the game, not to dominate it, but to rewrite it. But here's the catch. Most good people don't think like strategists. They think like idealists. They assume that truth will speak for itself, that fairness will eventually prevail, that if they just keep doing good work, someone will notice. But the world doesn't operate on those assumptions. It operates on incentives. And those incentives are often blind to virtue. So the ethically strategic individual, the one who wants to do good and win, must think differently. They must blend wisdom with cunning, integrity with adaptability. They must understand how systems work, how people respond, how power flows, and then decide, consciously, to use that knowledge for something greater than personal gain. This isn't about becoming manipulative. It's about becoming aware. If you don't understand power, then you're always vulnerable to those who do. If you don't understand influence, then you'll always be at the mercy of those who control the narrative. And if you don't understand systems, then you're just another well-meaning individual getting outplayed by those who do. So the ethically strategic person must learn the rules not to exploit them, but to change them. Because systems don't evolve through passive resistance. They evolve through active redesign, and that requires power. It requires access. It requires being at the table, not just shouting from outside the room. But let's be honest, this is hard, because the moment you step into the arena of power, you enter a space filled with moral compromise, the temptation to cut corners, to justify small lies for big outcomes, to play the same games as the ruthless, just better. And this is where most good people fall, not because they're weak, but because they're unprepared. They haven't developed the internal compass strong enough to navigate the storm. That compass, the one that holds you steady when the rewards of deception are right in front of you, has to be built intentionally. It's forged through self-awareness, philosophical reflection, and a deep commitment to why you're doing what you're doing. Without that, strategy becomes seduction, and seduction becomes corruption. So, how do we build this new kind of person, the ethically strategic human? It starts with education. Not just academic knowledge, but philosophical literacy. We need people who can think in systems, who understand game theory, who read history not just for events but for patterns of power. We need creators who understand algorithms and don't just chase virality, but use it to elevate truth. We need entrepreneurs who know how to scale businesses without selling out their values. We need leaders who understand psychology, persuasion, and charisma, and still choose empathy over manipulation. In other words, we need to train a generation of philosopher warriors. And that's not a fantasy. It's already happening in fragments, people who are quietly rewriting the rules of success, who are building alternative systems, and who are showing that you can win without selling your soul. But they're rare. And they're often drowned out by louder, flashier, more ruthless voices. So the question becomes, how do we amplify them? How do we make ethical success not just possible, but desirable? How do we shift the culture so that being both good and strategic becomes the new model of leadership? That's the frontier we stand on. Because if we don't evolve in this direction, the future will continue to be shaped by those who confuse power with worth, dominance with excellence, and attention with truth. And we'll keep wondering why the worst people rise when the real tragedy is that the best people never learned how. So ask yourself, what would it look like to be both dangerous and good? Both sharp and sincere? Both a strategist and a servant to something larger than yourself? In the final part, we'll explore the ultimate philosophical payoff. We'll ask, if Darwinian success favors the ruthless, can we redefine what fitness means and create a world where excellence and empathy are not enemies, but allies? Redefining fitness, why the future belongs to those who master both power and principle. Darwin showed us that life is a contest of adaptation. But what if we've misunderstood what fittest truly means? For generations, we assumed it meant the strongest, the fastest, the most aggressive, the ones who claw to the top by any means necessary. And in many ways, that interpretation has shaped our systems, our leaders, and our culture. We've normalized the idea that ruthlessness is strength, that empathy is weakness, that power must come at the cost of principle. But what if that's not the full picture? What if the next great leap in human evolution isn't physical or technological but moral? Let's reframe fitness. In biology, fitness simply means the ability to survive and reproduce in a given environment. But humans are not just biological creatures, we're social, emotional, and philosophical beings. Our environment isn't just nature, it's culture, systems, media, institutions. And in this new landscape, survival isn't just about brute force. It's about cooperation, trust, vision, and long-term thinking. The people and ideas that endure, always the loudest or most dominant, they're the ones that build, that connect, that elevate. So maybe Darwinism isn't just about who can win, it's about who can sustain. Because here's the truth, ruthlessness is efficient, but it burns fast. It creates enemies, it corrodes systems. It wins short-term games at the cost of long-term trust. We've seen it again and again. Tyrants rise, but they fall. Corrupt companies scale, but they collapse. Influencers go viral, but disappear in scandals. Ruthlessness wins the sprint, but loses the marathon. And the future belongs to those who can play both, who can think long and act sharp, who can wield power without becoming consumed by it. That's the new definition of fitness, power with principle. It's the capacity to lead without dominating, to influence without deceiving, to act with strength and still preserve your soul. It means understanding systems, but not becoming a slave to them. It means building strategies that align with your values, not strategies that require you to bury them. This is the next stage of human evolution, not a change in our DNA, but a change in our ethos. And it starts with each of us asking hard questions. What kind of success am I chasing? What kind of person am I becoming to get it? Am I building something that will last or just something that will be seen? Because the truth is, power is available to all of us. We live in a world where ideas move faster than ever, where influence is democratized through platforms, where one voice can shape millions. But with that power comes a test. Will I use it to dominate or to uplift, to manipulate or to enlighten? The future will be shaped by those who answer that test with clarity and conviction. The ones who understand that true influence isn't about control, it's about alignment. An alignment between what you believe, what you do, and what you create. That's the kind of power that lasts. That's the kind of legacy that doesn't rot. And that's the kind of leadership the world is starving for. Because here's the final truth. The worst people have succeeded because the best people have stayed silent, small, or unaware. But that's changing. Slowly, quietly, a new archetype is emerging. Not the ruthless winner, not the passive idealist, but the ethical strategist. The one who sees the game, knows the game, and chooses to play differently. Not just to win, but to change the rules forever. So ask yourself, right now, am I just trying to survive or am I trying to evolve? Because the future doesn't belong to the cruel. It belongs to those who can hold a sword in one hand and a compass in the other. That's how the best people win. Not by becoming worse, but by becoming wiser.